The first thing is that your meat should always be at room temperature. Now if you take your meat straight out of the fridge, all you have to do is keep the meat in the packet and just run it under warm water while it's still in its packet, and that will quickly bring it up to room temperature. So the second important tip is that you should pat your steak dry with some paper towels. If the steak is too wet, instead of getting a nice browning caramelization effect on the outside of the steak will kind of end up stewing. And the third step is to season your steak really well with some salt. As well as giving the steak flavor, of course, the salt actually helps give it a nice brown crust on the outside as well. Important tip number 4 is you need a really good pan. I like to use cast iron pans, and we use the Lodge brand of cast iron pans at My Food Bag. And get your pan really, really nice and hot. So season side of the steak down first, and then you can season the other side. And now don't be tempted to keep flipping your steak, as some people like to do. Just let it be, let it cook there for about 2 minutes, which is about right for medium rare, and then turn it over. And you can press down a little bit on the meat, just to make sure that the surface of the meat is making contact with the surface of the pan. So I'm cooking this piece of steak for about 2 minutes on each side for medium rare, but of course it's going to depend on how thick your steak is. So if you have a much thinner steak, cook it for a lot less time. If your steak is really, really thick, you might have to cook it for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. There's a beautifully cooked piece of steak. Next super important tip is make sure you rest your meat after it's cooked. It makes such a big difference. If I cut into the steak right now, it's going to lose all of its juiciness and a lot of the flavor too. But if I let it rest for about 5 minutes, and you can keep it wrapped in tin foil in a warm place to keep it warm, when I cut into that steak, all of the juices are going to have reabsorbed back into the meat, keeping it really tender and juicy and yummy. I like to cut my steak on an angle. So you can see the steak is beautifully cooked to medium, just how I like it. And you can see how delicious and juicy it is. It looks so good. I'm just going to have a little taste now. Yum.